Here I am again, live. Happy 52 weeks. This is Alexa Hampton, and today we will be speaking to Suzanne Tucker, who I failed to connect to a moment ago, but I feel total confidence that this time I'm going to get it right. There she is. Go, Suzanne Tucker. She's connecting. We have liftoff. Yay!
Oh,
I gotta back up. I'm super close. Hello, darling.
hello, darling. Oh my God, if I don't keep my glasses on, then I really can't. Like, you're just this like beautiful blur, you know.
Oh, good. Keep them off. So where are you? Hello, Joy. Where are you, Suzanne?
I'm actually down in Santa Barbara. This is where we spend August, and
Nice.
it's our little sort of, I call it my mouse house because it's really tiny and it's really simple. It's my blue and white house, and uh, everything here is just sort of blue and white because it's so small and tiny. And it's where I feel the most peaceful because I look at the mountains and it's lovely. And my mother's nearby. I mean, you know, you've got a similar thing out in the Hamptons.
I do, though, of course, as we all know, not my house. And there's a liberation to that on the one hand because it's not your house.
Oh, yeah.
But then it's just like, oh, shit, this is not my house. But happy nonetheless.
Yeah. I think
My favorite thing to do on these live Instas is talk about how you got started. And you have such a great story. Will you please tell us?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, oops, sorry, I just hit the table. Yeah, it's interesting. My story is one that in a broad sense, I wish more wannabe designers would get, actually, and I'm sure you do too. Because you and I have talked endlessly, you know, about the importance of having a mentor and having had training and all those kinds of great things. And how far back do you want to go? Do you want to go to, like, you know, graduating from college with my degree in design? Okay.
Yeah, because you've had a journey, as they call it. But it's nice to know, like, how do we do it? How do people do it?
Well, I suppose people ask me, you know, did I always know I wanted to do this? And I was always the artistic child in the family. And so my mother always encouraged me.
Where are you in birth order?
I'm the baby, but there's only two of
us.
I'm exactly right. Yes. And so I was always the artistic one. My mother always encouraged me to, you know, take art classes and keep doing it and keep doing it. And she tells me how I would spend hours rearranging the ornaments on the Christmas tree. Now, mind you, I think I was, you know, all of 4 feet tall, and they all ended up all this size.
Right. The lower half of the tree was something else.
Exactly. But I went to college and studied first art history. Then I was a dance major for 1 quarter because I wanted to take the advanced dance classes. And then I went back into interior architecture. And then that was up at University of Oregon, which has the most terrific interior architecture program. And then I transferred down to UCLA because I just could not handle that rain. I mean, being in Santa Barbara, just like, oh, too depressed. So I transferred to UCLA, and that was when they had a fabulous design department that was actually in their art department. And so I just immersed myself in all things design and loved it with an emphasis in textiles, and it was fabulous. But then, of course, you know, graduating, there weren't really any jobs in design per se. I mean, it was much more elusive sort of back then. And
yeah, I think it's that typical. What do you do? Do you want to make it into a career? Should you do English? Or, you know, like what generic thing are you interested in? But but that you could really love doing your whole life. And I think in lots of ways, obviously, studying design is much better than just, you know, something else that's not speaking to your heart.
Well, that's true.
Like economics.
I'm kind of the poster child, and you probably are in a way too, of sort of like do what you love and the rest will follow. Because I also grew up in a family with a much, much older father. And the concept of his daughters having careers never,
Yeah,
ever
yeah.
was ever crossed anyone's lips at the dinner table. I mean, that just wasn't the thing. I mean, as far as he was concerned, he sent his daughters to college to get an MRS degree. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
you do all that. So
Did you get your MRS degree in college?
I did not get my MRS degree in college.
No
uh,
misses for you?
FA, which could stand for something else, but anyway. So then, again, as I said, graduating, there weren't exactly a lot of jobs out there in design. Most of the designers had very small shops, like 2 or 3 people kind of things. At that point, I didn't want to go to New York yet. And so I remember my mother saying, well, you've always loved fashion. So I ended up going through the executive training program at the May department store, which was actually a fantastic
Yeah.
experience because, I took no business classes and, I think I took math in sophomore year of high school or something. But it was a great experience because it threw me into that whole retail world and the whole customer service world and the whole thing of, buying and all these things. And
Well,
then,
think of all the people who came out of Lord & Taylor. I
well,
mean,
exactly.
it was an
Yeah.
extremely accepted way, like a good way to enter into interior design as a career.
Yes, yes, that's true. Although I wasn't honestly thinking of that kind of path. And then I was recruited away from them by I. Magnons in Beverly Hills. And I was, I think, their youngest manager in their designer salon. And then I managed the Rive Gauche boutique and Bottega Veneta and Louis Vuitton. And here I was, all of 22.
I salute to all of these choices.
I had a killer wardrobe at like 23 years old that I could ill afford. But in those days, you got everything at cost.
Yeah.
You were an executive with the firm. So, everything, literally half price. I had great credit card bills. And
and was your father still with us while this burgeoning career was happening? Was he like, oh, my industrious daughter working?
Yeah, well, it was more like 1-800 Daddy, I need help paying my credit card.
yeah. Well, we've all been there.
But I will tell you, my experience at Magnons was it was sort of 2 years of my life that I would do in a heartbeat again, because it was the era. It was the era between Reagan being governor and president. And so they would come in all the time and, there would sit,
Adolfo for everybody.
Yeah, I know, exactly. And he was the nicest, dearest man, can we get you anything? Oh, no, I'm here just for Nancy. And, really sweet. And, but it was all that kitchen cabinet with all the clients, and it was fabulous. And, Betsy Bloomingdale and all these incredibly wonderful, stylish, chic ladies, and so lovely. I mean, really lovely people. And I really learned the whole aspect of, the customer service, and customers always right, and that very high level, which I think is such an important thing to learn. And then a romance took me to London. So I moved to London for a few years, and then that crashed and burned.
You left the rain of Oregon and hopped right over to London.
Oh, the glamour of Beverly Hills, right? When Clint Eastwood opened the restaurant door for me and I looked up and I couldn't even speak, I was completely apoplectic because I was so dazzled, I didn't even say thank you. But anyway, I moved to London and I worked for one of John Fowler's last assistants, a fellow who's sadly no longer with us, by the name of Peter Hood. And Peter was fantastic because he did a lot of National Trust houses. And so I got immersed into all of that fabulous Englishness, and which is my blood. My mother's British. So I
also like appreciating precedents and why things are what they are.
Yes, it was completely that. And also experiencing a whole different color palette, because as we all know, what works in some lights doesn't work in another, but what works in California light certainly doesn't work in England light. And so I came back to California with all this sort of love of those wonderful, icky greens and
and orange juice walls.
yes, I mean, just, that was a fantastic experience, and learned fabulous upholstery and all those kind of great things and curtain details and
Excuse me. Thank God that's off green. Woo! That was a sneeze.
And then when I came back to California, it was pretty funny because, again, I was completely into my whole heady, I've been living in England thing. Mind you, I was now 25 years old. And everyone said, oh, you should go to work for Michael Taylor. Well, everything I had seen of Michael's work was just, white, rocks, trees,
Albeit beautiful white rocks, trees.
Right. But it was a totally different thing that, of course, got published and sold magazines. And I kind of thought, no, that didn't resonate, being because I'd come from England, And, but I eventually ended up responding to an ad in a newspaper. So children out there in Instaland, there were things called newspapers where you look at job applications, the want ads. And it was a pretty funny experience because I got someone who said, oh, well, come in, at 4:00 and tomorrow. So I came in all dressed in my, perfect Yves Saint Laurent Poppins look. And the guy whisked me into the back closet. I mean, literally the back closet, which was like, 4 feet by 6 feet, and was whispering. And I'm like, why are we in a closet whispering? And he said, Michael's not here. And I said, okay, when's he coming back? And he said, well, no one can know you're here. And I'm like, why not? And he said, because I haven't fired the person yet. So there was this whole like ridiculous cloak and dagger thing that, was going on.
Yeah.
And so he said, call back at 6:00. Well, I was going down to Atherton for a dinner with my roommate at her parents' house. Mm-hmm. And this is before cell phones, of course, when dinosaurs were still roaming the planet.
Right, exactly. Where you killed what you were about to eat.
Exactly. And I said, we're supposed to be there at 6:30. And it's a 45-minute drive. So I said, we have to pull over. I have to call this man. It's about a job. So we pull over to a gas station. I'm at the payphone, right? And I call Taylor's house. And I get this incredibly imperious butler answering the phone. Mr. Taylor is having a massage. Call back in an hour. Slam.
How indiscreet is that butler?
Whoa.
That's like when receptionists say they're in the bathroom. That is just like verboten.
Yeah, no. Really, tell me you didn't really say that. But anyway, so then here I am at, my roommate's parents' house for a nice dinner. And I had to excuse myself from the table. I said, I'm so sorry. I have to call a man about a job. And they knew who Michael Taylor was. And Michael and I ended up chatting for an hour on the phone about everything under the sun from his
I'm so uncomfortable, though, thinking of you making your roommate's parents wait an hour while you're chatting.
Exactly. And I'm sort of on this job interview.
Yeah.
And we didn't really talk about the job. We talked about everything else. We talked about traveling, about London, about, you name it. Anyway, he said, call my office in the morning. Okay, fine. So I get a phone call from his accountant who has me come in and interview. And he was like a character out of, oh my God, what was that cartoon series? He looked like Snidely Whiplash. Uh-huh. He had this little tiny little mustache, and he smoked those long brown Sherman, cigar things, cigarettes. And he really was this this creepy character. And after talking to me for 45 minutes, he said, well, the job is filled. And I was like,
you're like, by me.
Why am I here? And he said, but Michael needs a good secretary. In the days we called them secretaries. Uh-huh. And so I don't know what possessed me to bite my tongue, but I just said, well, what's involved?
I'm impressed. I'm impressed. At 25, one might be foolish enough to rip a person's head off.
absolutely pivot, walk out, door, exit stage left. But no, for whatever reason, I just bit my tongue and I said, well, okay, what's involved? Well, you need to make Michael's travel schedule. I'm like, fine, I can do that. Well, you need to speak with his clients. I'm like, fine, I can talk to a doorknob. You need to basically set his schedule and make sure he's on time. And I'm like, fine. So he calls Michael and he says, well, okay, so she's here and yes, she's perfect and whatever. And then he says to me, I assume your typing skills are good. Okay, I had been tested at 23 words a minute. Now,
is that a lot or a little?
I was just going to say, a good typist types 123 words a minute.
Okay. Like, I still hunt and peck.
I looked at him dead in the eye and I said, I am extremely accurate. So I didn't lie.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's what is it, the lie of omission? I didn't exactly.
It sounds like the Delphic Oracle. Take of it what you will. You know, like.
But how can you make mistakes when you type like this? You know, I mean, I was so pathetic. And anyway, so I got the job, and my first day on the job as Michael's secretary, Michael came down in a whirl of cologne because he'd always come out of the shower and put way too much cologne on, and he'd stop in front of you, and you'd get this like whoop of like, good morning, and he said, and I stood up and I immediately put out my hand and said hello and finally lovely to meet you. And he was so taken aback that anyone would speak to him like that because everyone was terrified of Michael in the office.
Did he have a temper?
They were terrified. He was a terrible bully. He was so mean to everyone. He really was. He was terrible. And my first half hour there were 10 people in the office, 9 of whom had only been there 6 months. And 1 had been there 10 years, his longtime assistant. So I kind of thought, oh, great, this job's going to go well. And anyway,
well, just let me stop you there. I think that's very interesting what you're saying because there's a lot of that still in client relations.
Yes.
How do you present yourself as the equal that you are, but still make sure they understand that you understand that you are a service provider and you're raring to go to work on their behalf.
Right.
It's a funny line to walk.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think what you learn, you know, again, I'm not quite so sure why I was so self-possessed at 25, but, you know, I think what you learn is you stand up and be polite. And it's as simple as that. And someone who's going to fall, you don't want to spend time anyway. So, but, you know, you stand up, look someone in the eye. Now we can't shake hands. I'm not sure what all of our children are going to be learning, but it was an interesting experience because then he was yelling at one of the decorative painters on the phone of having dropped 3 drops of Fuller O'Brien D32D for Blue Sky and on the client's desk. And he was yelling, and I'd never heard anyone yell like that in my life before. So I went in and I looked at him at his chair, and for people who've seen this photograph before, he had a big sort of hunt table with beautiful stone pedestals, and he sat in an elk antler chair. So there's this man, you know, surrounded by elk antlers, yelling, and Michael
very
was
Game of Thrones.
Oh, there would probably love that. And he was turning bright red. I mean, just absolutely bright red. And I looked at him, I thought, oh my God, this man's going to have a heart attack. So I started going like, you know, stop this. And he's looking at me and glaring, and he slams down the phone. He's like, what? And I'm looking at, oh dear, I'm going to get fired. I said, you need a glass of water. I'm going to get you a glass of water. And I went running out of the room and brought him back a glass of water. And I just said, you can't do this. You're going to have a heart attack. So here, drink this water. And I'm in the next room. And I ran away, you know. And pretty much from that first day to probably the next week when he was in New York, and he called me up and hung up on me, and I called him back and I said, don't ever do that to me again. It's the rudest thing in the world to do.
Yeah.
And then he apologized. And from that moment on, I was his pet. I was very indulged by Michael. And he then started taking me on all the projects.
And he by you, it sounds. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it was an interesting, it was an invaluable experience, put it that way, because he would, take me to all the projects and all the houses and clients, and then he realized I actually, had a degree in design, and I kind of knew what I was doing, at young age, kind of. And of course, then I had to find my replacement, of which there were about 5 secretaries in the next, 3 years.
How long before you became a designer for him?
Michael never had designers.
Oh, well, what are we calling it?
Exactly. Back, you were just all assistants. There were no titles.
Okay.
No one titles, for heaven's sakes. I mean, this is a world now of titles. But back then, it was just, you were just the assistant.
Right, but what were you interviewing for that first interview when he said that job's been filled?
Oh, I was interviewing. Oh, there's the other thing that's interesting. I was interviewing for the expediter position because I'd made it through the A's, through the D's, and down to the bottom of the E's in the want ads. And there was an expediter needed for an interior designer. That's how I found that.
Got it.
I didn't even know what the expediter did, quite frankly. And, but the interesting thing was, this is back in the early 80s. So the 80s, San Francisco was the height of the gay movement. And everywhere I went, everywhere I interviewed, I was kind of rejected because I was a woman. And it was a very interesting experience because several times people said, well, Michael Taylor is always hiring and firing. Oh, but he only wants guys. Oh, no, he just hired a guy. Or, it was all of a sudden I was in this sort of odd reverse discrimination of like, just because I was a woman was any less qualified. And so I was lucky to get my foot in the door, quite frankly. And so it was,
it was lucky that you got pulled into the closet.
pulled into
There's jokes to be made.
Yeah. And but he wanted a guy for the expediter job, so that's why I didn't get that one.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
Men are expediters, women are secretaries. Okay.
Yeah. Women were secretaries, men were expediters, and no one had the title of designer. Michael was it. But it was an amazing experience, and I was with him when he died. And
how long were you with him overall, total?
I started in 1981, and Michael died in 86. I left sort of in 85 and was kind of half in, half out. At that point, I was pregnant. I had my daughter in early 86. And then he died June of 86. And, hindsight's 1,000%, what you wish you had done and asked, and, all those conversations you wish you'd have had, right? And, I probably never would have fully quit in early 85 had I known he was going to die.
Yeah.
But that was the AIDS epidemic. And it's really hard to explain to people now what that was like.
Also in San Francisco, of all places.
Yeah. And there was a lot of fear. That's why this pandemic to me is like, well, yeah, you got to be smart, you got to be careful, but it's nothing like what's happening then. And not to get into a sort of a sad moment, but there was a point where we were daily going to funerals. I went to 3 funerals in one day. And it's really hard to explain that to people. And we lost immense amount of talent during those years.
Swaths of
and there was a whole young generation of upcoming talent that lost to the AIDS epidemic that, goodness knows what they'd be doing now. It would have been,
It's a little World War I-y.
Oh, yeah.
Like those young men, just a generation of young men.
No, it's very true. It's very true. So anyways, that was my beginning. And then
when did you start your own company?
Pretty much when Michael died, because Tim Marks, my now husband, called me and said, there's all these clients here. We're in the middle of these projects, and why don't we start a company together? Well, at that point, I had a 6-month-old baby, and I was like, Tim, my days of working, 9 to 5 are over right now. I got my hands full. And he said, okay, you do the design and I'll run the business. And I'm like, okay, so we started our company together.
As though that's any less tough, right? You do the design. That'll just take a minute or two.
Little did.
Tim.
Yeah. wasn't 9 to 5. It was all the time.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
but that was 1986. And so we started our company together, and I'd known Tim from gosh, years before. And, and then, oh my gosh, I mean, there's a lot of history that I could go through here, but I was very fortunate. We were very fortunate that there were already some fabulous clients who were willing to stick with us and carry on. And, you know, some weren't.
yeah.
And it was an interesting thing because you have this a little bit. So we started off as calling ourselves Michael Taylor Associates. And we pretty quickly realized that it's not like good old Morgan Bank. You know, JP Morgan is long gone, but that name, you know, it carries on. It means something like that. In the design world, I mean, your father is legendary to this day. And, you know, everything about him is still legendary, iconic, and fantastic. And
you say the cutest things.
I adored your father. I knew your father, and Tim knew your father. Had dinner with him, and your mom met you as a little girl. I think you were just out of diapers, but no, Tim is not 85 years old. But anyway, although I am the much younger wife. But
yeah, there's that question. What value do you know? My mother and I thought, like, okay, I can either continue this or we could sell the name, but what's the name worth?
Right.
Without
the lead.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Macmillan is a great example of that working.
Mm-hmm.
Harris Hadley.
But it wasn't that. You know, we tried to be, you know, as I say, Michael Taylor Associates, you know, Mark Hampton Inc. But you are Alexa Hampton in your own right, and that's bias. So we pretty quickly realized that people want to know what you do. They knew what your dad did. They knew what Michael Taylor did. They were in the design.
So I'll get calls saying, "Can we speak to Mark? Is Mark your husband?" I'm like.
I know. Yeah. Well, let me get the Ouija board out.
Yeah, exactly.
Hello, Daddy.
He's not available to talk right now.
Right, exactly. Oh, I think you just had an anniversary of your father's passing, didn't you?
No, it wasn't. I just happened to be, we had a dear friend of the family who just died. And like one of my parents' best friends, and she was laid to rest in the same cemetery. So my mother and her widower and I went to visit them, and they're like 2 rows apart, and it was actually a really lovely visit.
That's great.
Yeah, it was great.
I don't do that with my father. My father was military career, served in both world wars, and he wanted to be buried at sea. Off of a combatant vessel, which he died 20 years ago this summer. And then 9/11 happened. We were coming up to that 20th anniversary, and we had yet to scatter his ashes. So getting a combatant vessel during that period of time was not easy. But he was ultimately buried at sea, and it's quite beautiful.
What was the vessel?
It was a destroyer. Ultimately, it was it's a combatant vessel, in case you did. Like an aircraft carrier or a destroyer would be a combatant vessel. And
in the cemetery where my father is, there are tons of captains lost at sea markers. It's pretty crazy.
It's beautiful. They send you a whole thing about the actual coordinates in the ocean where the ceremony was. And it's very beautiful. So, but anyway, he's never really left. You and I are daddy's girls. We've talked about this.
And obviously, to some extent, you were with Michael. But then you were like, enough now. I've made babies. This cute guy Tim wants to keep doing this. And how long had you known Tim at this point?
When we started a company together?
Yeah.
Tim and I had known each other for about 6 years. We met back in 1980. But then, you know, he was dating all the wrong girls. And sorry if you're all out there listening, but anyway, you were right. And and I was married. Well, actually, we met before I met my then husband. But it just was, timing is everything in life.
Sure.
And then I was married and had my daughter Hatley, and then sadly got a divorce. But you know, that's the way life goes. And then I was a single mom for about 4 years, and then it was kind of one of those things where, you know, in your own backyard, Dorothy, there it is.
Yeah, and you and he were already doing this business together.
We were already in business together, and yeah, it was a sort of moment. I'll be honest with you. It was Halloween night. It was so bizarre. It was Halloween because my daughter wanted her Uncle Timmy to come trick-or-treating with her. And I'm thinking, okay, honey, you can ask him, but you know, he may not want to. But he did. And it was just one of those moments where we kind of looked at each other.
Maybe she knew something that you had yet to.
Yeah, she proposed to him actually. Yeah, about a year later or so, and she turned to him and said, "Will you please marry my mommy?" And you know, he was so taken aback. So you know, whenever he's beastly, I always so.
He's not beastly ever. I don't believe that.
Well, we all have our moments, but no, he's not. He's not. Very lucky, and it's very unusual that, you know, we have a husband and wife business together, and a lot of people realize that, you know, like the marks of Tucker and Marks, that's actually my husband. You know,
Yeah.
they don't, you know, we don't advertise
It's like,
that.
wait.
Yeah.
What was that detective show with Stephanie Powers?
Oh, yes.
Heart to Heart.
Heart to
You're like Heart to Heart.
Right, exactly. It's definitely a little bit like that. And people say, "Oh my God, how can you stand to work with your husband all day long and see him all day long?" Well, the reality is we don't exactly sit there side by side.
Well, and it's because you could stand him that you married him. You could
Right.
stand quite a lot of him.
Well, exactly. There's that. But it's also a matter of having been brought up with a much older father, I was accustomed to a different role model than most people, most people growing up. I was accustomed because my father retired when I was 3 years old. So I never knew daddy to go to work. I mean, daddy was always around. And so to me, that's normal, is that the man is always around. So it was kind of the demise of all my other relationships that, you know, those men just weren't around enough. So
Yeah. That's fascinating.
But
So now you have the company, the two of you. This is 86, you said?
we started it in 86. Yes. I know.
And what has the arc felt like? Somebody was talking to somebody about how scary the pandemic is vis-a-vis business, and how it just like terrifies me, and what if I sink the ship, and, you know, happy conversations like that. And the person to whom I was speaking said, "Well, certainly you must be used to this by now. It's the nature of the beast." And I was like, "Yeah, sort of, kind of is."
Well, I don't think any of us want to get used to it.
No, but there is, you know, the calls come in, you do the jobs, you wait for the calls. There's not a, you know,
I thought the COVID aspect is just, you know.
which is, yes, the uncertainty of
Yeah.
life.
You know, I think a little bit of that is, I think a little bit of that is a personality thing, like how you just in general cope. I'm really not a worrier. Although I'll worry about my daughter, that's the maternal thing, but I'm not a worrier at heart. Tim's more the worrier, so he gets to carry that, and I get to just, you know, to do my thing. I'm not, and I'm also an extremely optimistic person. I believe in the good of people. I believe in the good of my staff. I trust people, probably to a fault. But I think I'd rather be that way. And I do think with sort of the, you know, the tides of the business and so forth, if any of us had been asked back mid-March, "Gee, what do you think your world is going to be like at mid-August?" I'm not sure any of us had the right crystal ball in front of us, because
I mean, I was on phone Zooms with class mothers where we were given surveys like, "Do you think summer camp will happen? and
Yeah.
50% said yes. I mean, we were completely varied in our responses.
Yeah, exactly. And look what's happened to the industry. The home furnishings industry on, I'd say, a mass merchandising level has just skyrocketed because
Yeah.
everyone home and they needed a desk at home and they needed a desk, they needed a desk chair. So the very basics started to
Yeah,
percolate.
sheets.
And then I'm sure you're getting the same thing. I'm getting calls from past clients who like, okay, we did the living room 20 years ago. Let's redo it all. And
Or let's retrofit these rooms too.
exactly.
I feel that way about my own house.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. Matter of fact, it's funny because I thought, okay, well, now's my chance to, completely redo my family room and do all of this. Have I done that? No. What have I done? I'm wallpapering my daughter's bedroom. My daughter's not going to live at home again. I mean, it's like, why am I doing this? Well, I saw the wallpaper and I thought, well, this would be pretty in there. So, but I think, we each handle it differently. But I will say it's been interesting to watch the resilience, I'm going to put it that way, the resilience of the industry, the resilience of our colleagues, the resilience of the builders, and our clients.
Oh,
yeah. I will really give people a tremendous...
And the landscapers and gardeners hitting the ground running.
Yeah, yeah. And, those are the people who, I will champion and who need our support. And I don't know about you in New York, but in San Francisco, all of our construction sites got shut down. San Francisco and sort of the surrounding counties.
Ours were considered essential.
Yeah, ours were not. Ours were shut down completely. And the clients were actually really quite good. I mean, I think if one thing this has taught our clients is it's taught them to have a little more patience and a little more understanding of kind of what we all juggle and how our world operates and the process of design. Because we all know on the inside, this is not, doesn't happen overnight. It's truly a long-term process to get it right and to do really high-end work. And that's where I think people think, oh, but, I saw it on TV and I saw this was done right away. And, well, I was surfing the web and I found this and, well, we can just buy this. And I'm like, well, no, it's about a third too small and it's not.
Yeah.
But
I walked into Meacock's Garden yesterday in Southampton and walked out with the truck full of stuff, and that was so great.
Good.
But yeah, Amazon has ruined all of our sense of what is an appropriate time to wait. Can you imagine our children waiting each week to watch an episode of something?
Oh God, no, exactly.
God, no. Or their sneakers come in 3 days. They're like, oh, like that's a long time.
No, that's so true. We've become this instant, society. And yeah, sure, we can always pull our cars up and load up with fabulous things. And, you've got the eye to do that. Most people don't. And you could fill a house with stuff. But that doesn't mean it's good. That doesn't mean it's timeless. That
or that it's thought out.
Exactly. Doesn't mean it's thought out. But we have the ability to do that. That's sort of our gift. And maybe our curse, I'm not sure, but it's so different.
It's our job. Gift, curse, whatever. It's our job.
There's the job. But I will say it felt really good to start going back to site visits again. And I'm doing that. I had to get back into my office, even though, everything was shut down in San Francisco. But, we're a business of stuff. We can't do what we do behind a computer. We need our stuff.
Yeah.
And our stones and our wood samples and our trims and, that's just our world.
So I think the fabric houses have been doing really great. Like I have things shipped to me wherever I am or shipped to a colleague and then my colleague will ship it to me. And that's been good because I can't look on a computer screen and tell what the real feeling or sense of the fabric or color even. I've got to have it in my hand.
Yeah.
So they've been great about sending them out.
Yeah. I tried that for the first time at the beginning of the shutdown. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just pick these off the website. Oh my God, they were awful. Right.
It's hard. It's hard to see.
Screen is not our friend, and from the standpoint of picking colors of fabrics and You have to have that in your hand.
Yeah.
But I do think
which is why we need the mail service.
Exactly. Our poor postman. Hello, I love my postman. But yeah, but our industry has been incredibly resilient. The hard thing has been, of course, any of our nonprofits that we support. And you and I support many of the same ones. And that's where I feel, the light needs to be put onto them to say, if people can give, if they can support. But I don't know if you've seen, but you've been to the Fall Antique Show in San Francisco, and this beloved event for 39 years, and of course it can't happen this year. So we've pivoted to do it through InCollect, and InCollect did the Philadelphia show, they did the Nantucket show. So we'll see, but it's not a benefit for Enterprise for Youth, who's the normal beneficiary. It is really a way to get these dealers exposed and to get them marketed and to be supported.
And keep them alive to fight another day. And actually, antiques are the great, if people are having instant gratification desires, that's the place to go do it.
Oh, yeah.
Get an antique. It's there. It has provenance. It has, you know that it was probably made well. It's not made of hopes and dreams and bad foam.
Ultimate recycle, it's... you're helping the environment, buying used, right? Buy the antique. And, I always tell clients, and I still have a lot of clients who want antique and realize and value them. And I have others who don't quite get it, but I always say to them, look, you need something old in every room and you don't want to be it. So get something that has some age and provenance and soul. I mean, that's really what it is. Otherwise, you can look like a showroom. And
somebody was telling me the other day that as these great rooms, like Ann Bass's or like Otzi Charles, as these rooms are being pulled together for sales, they're having this second life to excite people to see just how great those rooms were and how, it has a halo effect on antiques, we hope.
Yes.
And I thought that was a really interesting point.
Yeah, I think, that's the other thing. I mean, going back to the conversation about mentoring and the importance of that, I do feel that that's so lacking in the young designers world today, is that they haven't been taught any of that. And it's not taught in schools, which is really too bad. I mean,
hey. Some schools are amazing.
Well, but
New York School of Interior Design.
I know New York School of Interior Design is a rarity, and they're wonderful. And they do teach a history of design class. But I can't tell you how many people I've interviewed for, the studio and asked them, so, who are your favorite designers from the past? And they can't really do that because they never really studied it. And I think, how are you going to learn? How are you going to learn sort of, all of that knowledge? And you've got to teach yourself. That's why library is so.
If NYSID, here's an idea. If NYSID were to do a recorded series, and I could give the lecture about Mark Hampton with some other of, class of friends that I love who are in design now, and you could give the class on Michael Taylor, and we could assemble a course where each of the people who came out of the office, if those people are not alive, could describe it. I mean, you get an Elsie DeWolf expert, you get someone to talk about Jonathan Adler, that'd be a great course. And I bet you, because it would be given by people who are working, and you in California maybe can't come to the New York School of Design, it could be recordable, and it would be something people not not in school would still pay to watch. It could be a way of supporting the school and getting like a great, tonight I'm watching this episode on this great designer. Tell me about Nancy Lancaster. And all of those kids can follow yes, of course, Parrish Hadley. There's so many graduates of Parrish Hadley that should each give a course.
Yes.
Jimmy Steinmeier and David Easton. I mean, that would be a great series.
It would be a fantastic series, and I think not only would it be so great for the students of the school and as a regular sort of curriculum, But it would also be something that, you know, people I know would pay to watch it and to take it, and it's a great fundraiser.
And
You know,
then the kids, the students, get that it becomes part of their vernacular. They understand what something is that looks like a Taylor. Like,
right.
that's a look. What does it mean? How is it comprised? How is scale utilized? You know, like I sometimes think of Michael Taylor and John Saladino as a yin and a yang.
Hmm.
You know, they could have those conversations knowing what they're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's true. And I think it's also a matter of teaching people, like, what is it you look for? To develop a critical eye. Like, you know, like when I was a young girl interviewing with Michael Taylor, I didn't really like what I saw that Michael did. It was
Yeah, we
way
had to grow up, right?
exactly. And so I was a little dismissive of it. What the hell did I know, right? But I sort of thought, oh God, it's just those white and trees and rocks and ball pillows. Well, that was what made the phone ring. It paid the bill. It sold the magazines. Michael's true genius was in the way he put together antiques and
Mm-hmm.
antiquities and the scale of things and the stuff that didn't actually get published. So that's where I think, you know, developing that critical eye and
And
teaching.
his use of antiques, the periods of antiques that he used, he popularized in America.
Yes,
You know, you
exactly.
could go to the Mediterranean and see a lot of those big, chunky wood Portuguese pieces
Yeah.
and be like, oh, that's so cool, that's so beautiful and European. But he really showed how to use it so deftly in a modern setting, which was, you know, that on the East Coast wasn't, you know, didn't feel anywhere near the same.
No, I mean, you know, he's credited with, you know, the California look. It wasn't something he intentionally set out to do.
No,
It
of
was
course
just
not.
his vision. But it's also it's like your father, you know, having done such historic things like, you know, in the White House and Gracie Mansion and his use of furniture and scale for those places and sort of how he approached it. And, you know, to be a student and to hear you speak about that, I would be fabulous. I mean, I never want to stop learning. I feel I learn something every single day being in the design. And it's a gift to be able to be in this world, I think, and to have a passion for it and passion for architecture. Were you ever going to be an architect? I was. I
No,
was.
no, I don't have the skill sets at all. I mean, I would like to say that I have the eye, but you know that's me saying that. But math and
Oh,
like, that was
so
not going to work. But
played with
if I were in a perfect world, if I had all the skills available to me, of course I would love to do that.
yeah.
Would love it.
I played with the idea of going to architecture school. Um, I didn't want to do all the math. I mean, that was it. That was the
That's
killer
it.
for I want all that math. And in hindsight, and actually in foresight, I actually think I got the best of both worlds because I get to work with the most fabulous architects all around the country, and I've learned from them. Mike,
Mm-hmm.
bringing in architecture, and I learned from him the importance of an interior designer's eye in conjunction with architect.
An
Um,
amazing architect, yeah.
you make each other's work so much better and when you're remodeling or when you're building and have that collaboration and that understanding of architecture and scale and proportion and how that all goes together, that is invaluable. um, and I still learn on that one. I love it. It's great.
Yeah, there's getting to be on a project with a really, really talented architect is just like Christmas morning.
Yes, it's so true. It's so true, for sure. And of course, you and I are on the board of the Institute of Classical Architecture and Art together, which no one knows how
You
we found.
can't swing a cat without hitting a talented architect.
I know, and of course, no one is aware how we pass notes back and forth to each other during those board meetings.
Okay,
But
good for her.
but that's actually it's you know it's such a great thing, and
It's so great.
the support and
And
the
what they've done with their online programs,
yeah.
that's entertainment. I mean, that's not just scholarship. That's something you want to watch.
Right. I mean, I don't have time during the day to do that, so I'll watch it at night. And it's been fantastic and a great learning experience. And
Yeah.
really wonderful. And so, yeah, everyone out there in Instaland, we encourage you to watch that. Go to classicist.org and watch, because it's amazing. And it's gone
Yeah, there's
across,
so many things to see.
yeah, the Northern California chapter, which I was a co-founder, 15 years ago. They've been able to pull up all of those things. They're doing online education. It's fantastic. It's really, really great. So what's next? When are we getting back into the city? When do I get to
Well,
come
I'm
to
getting some eyeliner tattooed today. So that's what's happening today. I've had it before, but every few years, if you tattoo your eyeliner, you have to redo it. So that's my plan for today. And then I join my husband tomorrow. And I've got so many cool products coming out, which I'll tell you when it's closer. But
Okay.
and I'm trying to get this TV show up and
Yes.
running.
Yes.
Fingers
Which actually,
crossed.
I think it's a brilliant idea for you to do that. You're so good at it. You know, you've got the presence, you photograph really beautifully, you've got the
And
wherewithal.
it's not like I'm quitting my day job. You know, it's something that I could take with me, you know, as I travel hither and thither. Like, let's
Yeah.
check out the city. You know,
Yeah. No, I think that's great. So then it's going to be like, are you actually going to go to those cities? I mean,
I think if the first season were national, yeah, you get like a car sponsor and road trip it. I mean, I drove 6 hours the other day to a job site and 6 hours back the next day, and I had a great time. You
I
know,
was
we
going to
just
wine sponsor, but maybe the wine sponsor and the car sponsor aren't a good idea
yeah,
together.
that's and it would really have to be tequila if we were going to be on brand.
I have a sponsor for you. I've got great.
Oh, say, Jana Talend, how do we help with the TV program? I'm not sure. If it's PBS, then we'll need to go in with sponsors, which would be great. But right now we're just trying to figure out, you know, who just make a deal.
Yeah.
So let's make a deal.
It was
all right. It is 1:57.
Yeah,
I did a. Go?
What's that?
You got to go.
I don't have to go. Do you have to go?
Not yet.
Not yet. I was going to say I did a master class in textiles. I'm sure you didn't miss it, Alexa, but it was a couple of weeks ago.
Never.
It you know, via Zoom, and we had so many people ask, like, do a series, do a master class series, and all of that sort of thing. And so I'm going to be doing another one. I can't tell you what it's on, but it's going to be fun.
Well, you'll tell us right in advance.
I will tell you all soon enough. How's that?
Okay.
It's going to be on house jewelry.
Awesome.
What I call house jewelry.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. But the textile masterclass was a good thing to do because, again, it's
Can we see that on your website if we wanted to?
I believe so. I think either go to Suzanne Tucker Home. I think it's
Can
still.
You make sure?
Yeah, I'll make sure. I'll make sure those people out there in my Insta world get it on there, and yes, people can watch it. And I just did one with Barbara Salick on kitchen designs and that sort of thing. Which is fun for Waterworks, and you know, there's a lot out there. There's only so much we can all take in, but
it's nice. You know, even though we work on, you know, as you said, continuing learning. I want to know what's new and what you're doing in a kitchen design right now. Like, teach me. Let me know. I might want to copy you.
Well, exactly. Hey, I'm totally fine with that. And I think that's the wonderful aspect of having colleagues who truly can call up. I mean, we've called each other up and asked, you know, Bunny's called me up and asked me, you know, find this, and I tell her in San Francisco, and I've given so many colleagues, you know, sources around the country. And, you know, that's a really lovely aspect to have in our lives is each other. So how's that?
Yeah. And generosity and friendship.
Oh, yeah. It's what matters ultimately in the end, you know.
Along with cheese and foods.
Yeah. 1,000 years ago, I did a powder room, and I did it all in faux tortoise.
I know that powder room.
Exactly. Everyone knows that powder room.
Yeah.
It's been published a zillion times, and it's been knocked off so many times. And I had someone ask me, like, well, does it upset you? and that, you know, people are just copying it. I'm like, no, why would it upset me?
You set a standard.
If they find it
Yeah.
beautiful, surround themselves with beauty, go for it. I encourage that. And same with former staff who've left and gone on to their things. You know, I wish them well. I want them to be successful. What goes around comes around. You know, it's one of those
Yeah,
things.
and talking about mentorship, you know, of course it's gonna, if you have that relationship with the person with whom you worked, you hope to have it with the people who work with you, and then
Yes.
there'll be a continuum.
Yeah. Yeah. That's absolutely true. And the continuum, we look back again, that history design. Look at all the people who came out of Parrish Hadley. Look at the people who came out of Markhampton. Look at Michael Taylor. I mean, all of that. It's
Yeah.
remember that great tree that was
That House Beautiful did.
yeah, that was
Yeah,
great to
that was
see that
great.
you're on it and I'm on it, and you know that's fun. I have it framed in my office. I think it's
You should
above
get
the or something,
it.
or the bathroom somewhere.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you.
always great talking to you and getting to see your pretty face.
Oh, and yours.
And it's just, and it's, yeah, thank you.
I miss you.
I miss you, but we'll be together soon,
We will.
somehow. You.
Will. And take good care. I love to your mom and your
Oh,
cute
thank
husband.
you.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Thanks,
Yeah,
Alexa.
thanks. Kisses. Speak to you soon.
Love you. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye, guys. I'm leaving.